My name is Sharon Folk, and I am interviewing Aisha Headwood, who works for the Wheel to Drive driving school. Is it right in Detroit?
Yes, we're located right in Detroit. We have a location in Midtown and another in Southwest Detroit.
As we discussed right before we got on the call, I actually had a situation. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because a lot of times, the more information you know in advance of an emergency situation, the safer you'll be in driving and kind of in general. But what happened to me was I was near my house and I was driving downhill on a snowy road, and there was literally a like body of water to my right with no barrier to keep us from going that way. And I lost control of my vehicle in like icy weather. And I think that I knew not to brake. I think that was my main first instinct, was if I brake, then it could be even worse. But I remember the fright of that moment, how tenuous it is in terms of something like that could happen so quickly without, the ability to really react. I slowed down. I didn't immediately brake and was able to get control, kind of stay headed downwards and didn't veer to the right, which was an unsafe place to be. I guess as a way of opening up, my question to you would be, what are some of the best practices to prepare your vehicle before driving in the snow in general?
Yeah,
That
so
help
that
keep you
had
safe.
to be pretty traumatic, especially for the kids. And
Oh
we
yeah,
know that it was for them to not have ever forgotten that.
yeah.
But your response was actually the correct one, which is not to use your brakes. Some things that we can do to prepare so that that won't happen is just to really, really be aware of the weather conditions. Look, now we have our weather app that we can really double check and just see by the hour of how the weather could change. And we know here in Michigan, especially, it can change so fast. So just to prepare ahead, whether you're watching the news or checking your weather app pretty often so that you know what to expect. The other thing would be to, even before you leave, to just clear all your windows. If it's snowing outside, not only your windshield, but all the windows and the mirrors are so important because you can lose sight of some things that are out there that you may have been able to prevent from happening on the road just from doing that. Sounded like you did just this, are gentle and gradual. So, not doing things like jamming the brakes or reacting in a panicking way, but just making sure that everything is gentle and gradual, just like you would do on a dry road. To be proactive, keeping your tires in good shape, especially when the weather changes and the seasons are changing. That's a good time to just take a look at your tires to see if they need to be rotated or even replaced. But just remembering that as the seasons change, that's a very good indication of when you need to take a look at your tires again. And then also just planning ahead and leaving early. A lot of times, the reason that people are moving so quickly is because they're late, and we just want to make sure that we're planning ahead. We know that in bad weather, people tend to drive slower. They're trying to be safer. The roads tend to be more congested so that we can feel safer just driving and not feeling rushed. Just plan ahead, leave earlier than you normally would. And then we do have something right in the car on our dashboard. That little picture that can come on your dashboard is a little yellow light of a car with some slippery lines ahead of it, some curvy lines, and that's our ABS light. Most cars today do have ABS technology in the car, and we want to look at that because it's really a warning. It's a yellow light. Anything yellow means warning, just to let us know we have the potential to slide, and the car is sliding. So that's a good indication. And ABS is actually our friend to let us know that the technology is put in place to help us in braking once the car gets a little traction on the dry portion of the road.
And in terms of braking in the snow, that needs to be gradual. And I'm assuming that acceleration in the same way. I mean, like you were saying, that always kind of keeping your speed reduced to allow for better response times.
Yes, so you want to make sure that one thing you're doing, of course, is slowing down. The
Mhm.
higher speed that we're driving, the more apt we are to losing control. So we want to make sure that we are driving. Sometimes it may be at half the speed that we normally would drive, but definitely any road that we would be on, including the freeway, we don't need to go over 45 miles an hour. If those roads are slippery, if they haven't come out and plowed the roads yet, and they have that, even a coating of snow. You want to bring your speed down. Even if you had the best tires and the best brakes, it doesn't mean that the cars around you do. So we want to make sure that we're driving at a pace that we can pretty much control the traffic behind us just by making sure we're driving at a slower pace.
Now, if you drive a lot slower in the snow, maybe out of fear or just in general, like, is it okay to put your hazards on to let people know, like, go around me if you feel the need to go at a
Sure.
faster pace?
Yeah, and people do that quite often. So
Yeah.
if you feel the need to drive a lot slower than maybe other traffic is moving,
Mhm.
is perfectly normal, perfectly fine. Put your hazards on to communicate that to them.
And then in heavy snowfall, what are some suggestions for maintaining visibility? Like if you stop, what you should do to make sure that people can see your vehicle if it gets really, really bad on the roads?
So definitely keep your hazards on, and you want to
Mhm.
pull off the road as best you can. If you're on the freeway, that may mean exiting completely off of the freeway. If you're on a road, pulling in a parking lot or just somewhere safe. If you're unable to pull over into a different area, just pulling as far over on the shoulder as you can. If you're able to, even putting your hood up, just to let others know, okay, that's a car that's completely stopped. They're not moving at a slower pace.
Okay, okay. And I saw some interesting articles that talked about what you should keep in your car during the winter months to help in case you got stranded or something like that in for your own safety. And could you speak to some of those things?
Sure. So we want to make sure we keep things like a flashlight in case we lose power, the battery dies. Make sure you keep your phone charged as often as possible if the weather's really bad. You never know when you may need it to call for help. And then also a blanket. You want to keep something, again, if your car just runs out of gas or isn't running for some reason, you have something to keep you safe and warm. And then sometimes they'll recommend that you use a flare. So that's not as common, but sometimes if you buy a car kit, it may come with a flare, and then you can use the flare on the road just to let others know either you're in need of help or to go around. It just communicates that you're there in need of help and your car isn't moving.
Okay. And I have even seen things that suggest bottled water and granola and things like that. I mean, there was one time we were on the road and it was treacherous. Like we were just kind of
Oh,
literally
yes.
stuck, and there were multiple cars that were getting in accidents on both sides of the road. And it took hours to get home.
Yeah,
So in those instances,
very
you
important.
can't really travel with water because it would just, it wouldn't necessarily travel well all the
Yeah.
time. But in
Hmm.
terms of just having some things in the vehicle if it's not even safe to go off the road
Yes.
and get
I
something.
would recommend some type of snack,
Yeah.
something just to keep you with nutrients while you're waiting,
Yeah.
because like you said, you never know how long that might take. So I would recommend some type of snack and then something to stay hydrated.
Yeah. Now, I don't know, have you ever seen, I've seen items, it's almost like just like a metal thing that they suggest that you keep in your vehicle in case you were to get submerged. And I don't know if that's something that is encouraged or what your thoughts are about that. Like if
When
you
you
were
get your
locked in your
flashlight,
vehicle.
as you're preparing and making your survival kit, I would
Mhm.
recommend getting a metal flashlight
Okay.
versus a plastic flashlight. A lot of times they have kits that are specifically survival kits for cars that are available. But if not, you're certainly able to make your own. And when you're shopping for these type of things or choosing which flashlight to use that you even already have, you
Mhm.
use one that in case of emergency, you do have to break the glass, windshield or window, that you're able to do so with that metal flashlight. That
Mhm.
way you kind of have a 2-for-1 tool.
That's great. That's great. Any suggestions for allowing extra distance between the vehicle in front of you and surrounding you in the snow,
Mhm.
as it relates to like versus normal driving conditions?
Yes, and this is not a one size fits all
Mhm.
type of layout. So the worse the weather, the larger the distance, the following distance should be between you and the car in front of you. So where normally we could put 1 to 2 car lengths in front of you, if the weather is bad, if it's hard to see, if the roads haven't been plowed or salted yet, you want to double that to 2 to 4 car lengths. Sometimes it could be up to 4 car lengths. Visibility might be really bad. the roads might be really slick. So we have to, take that into consideration. Be proactive, look for that black ice that could be on the road. We look further ahead than we normally would look on a dry day. Number one, that gives us time to react, time to respond appropriately. It gives us time to think of what we're going to do rather than use those few seconds to panic. We can prepare earlier instead.
Right. And are there certain times of day where it's more hazardous to drive in snowy conditions?
Well, actually, as we know, we live in Michigan, and this could happen. The snowfall could happen even when we don't expect it. A day like today, we could go right outside, and oh my goodness, the temperature has gotten below 32 degrees. So I would just say, let's not depend on that. Let's just be very observant when we're on the road and just look for those signs of when it could be slippery and when the weather could change. So we know if it goes under those freezing temperatures, even though we may not see snow, that it could be slippery, it could be black ice at any moment. And just to do the things we talked about, like increase our following distance, be proactive with our survival kit, make sure our tires are good, and then just knowing how to respond in case you do slide, because it's going to happen. So if at some point everyone could slide, anybody could slide at any given moment. So just knowing how to respond in that case. Many times the car could, what they call fishtail, where the back tires could slide out to the right or to the left. And even me as a teenager, when that first happened, I didn't know what to do. It made me panic. And I just turned the wheel both ways, trying to correct it. But just knowing now how to handle that just puts me at ease. And the basic rule of it is if your car fishtails, meaning the back tires are sliding out to the right, you gently and gradually turn your wheel to the right, the same way the back of the car is sliding. Eventually, your car will straighten up. If you oversteer or move too quickly, it could slide back out to the left. And if that happens, again, very gently and gradually turn your wheel to the left. So whatever way the back of the car is sliding is the way you want to gently turn your wheel, which will help to straighten the car.
Okay, that's helpful. Any suggestions? Because the incident that I had, I was going down, it wasn't a steep hill, but it was a hill, and there wasn't a whole lot of room on either, like it was a very narrow road. Are there any suggestions for going up or downhill in snowy conditions?
Again, we want to take our time, try to drive in the tracks that are already there from previous traffic, if possible.
Mhm.
That may not always be there, but that's always a good first thing to do when you're in that situation. We also, some cars, not all, have lower gears. You can use your gear shift selector to one of the lower gears, like 1 or L. Sometimes cars have that. If not, you just want to take your time. And if you do slide, you want to make sure that you are focusing on your steering more so at that moment that you are braking. A lot of people feel I'm sliding, I need to brake to stop this car. We have to understand and really depend on the ABS brake technology that most cars have and know that the car just needs a little bit of traction on a little piece, the tiniest piece of dry surface to grip the road again and shift our focus on steering. So if I'm steering and I'm sliding into, let's just say, the wall, I want to at that point turn away from the wall. If I'm turning and I'm trying to make a left, but turning left is putting me into a pole, then I may need to straighten the wheel or turn right to at that point shift my focus on turning away from the pole. And just knowing that gradual and gentle braking, the car is going to stop. It may take a second or so, but it's going to stop.
Okay. You had kind of alluded to this already. Always allow extra time. If you have a half an hour, a trip that would normally take a half an hour, should you double the time to kind of allow enough time to get there in more
Yes.
wintry conditions?
I would recommend it. It just puts you at ease. It prevents you from having that anxiety about driving in the snow. I would leave, like you said, if it normally takes me 20 minutes to go to work, I take it to 40. It's better to get there early and just have a smooth drive that's, not working your nerves the whole time versus now you're worried about the weather and being late. So I would definitely say take time out, leave a lot earlier than usual, double your time just so that it makes for you driving and feeling safe inside.
Okay. The one thing I also saw on the list of the emergency thing is a phone charger. So that if you're in your vehicle for an extended period of time, and some people have navigation in their vehicles, but some people rely on their phone. And it may be that, like for me, I have navigation on my vehicle, but I'm more comfortable using my phone.
Yeah.
So, especially in snowy conditions, like whatever you are more familiar with is probably the safest thing to use. And to have a phone charger that is like, I have one that goes into the old lighter socket for the
Hmm.
car. What if your car becomes stuck in the snow? Like if you're on the road and it becomes stuck, or you pull off the road and then you're trying to get back on and you're stuck in the snow.
Okay, one thing that I just added in my trunk is a small shovel. Okay, around this time of year, when I put in my windshield brush, I also put in a small shovel.
Mhm.
Sometimes just having just a basic, it's not even 4 feet tall, little shovel in the car helps. And my shovel is not even metal, it's plastic, but it's helped me in the past. So
Mhm.
if you could keep one there, I would recommend that. I've also heard from other drivers using like a small bag of kitty litter just to help with traction, putting it
Mhm.
behind the tire where you're stuck. And then also just knowing that the more you use the gas pedal, a lot of times you're digging yourself deeper into that snow. So knowing to put the car in neutral as you are pushing the car, if you have to push your car out of snow, putting it in neutral first and then giving it a push and kind of rocking back and forth helps to get your car from being stuck in the snow.
Okay. And are there situations where if you don't have to go out, you shouldn't, in terms of, you had said before, listening to the news, listening to the Weather Channel, and a lot of times they'll say, unless it's an
Yes.
emergency, you should not leave your home. So I mean, it's pretty much spelled out for you most of the time.
Yes, statistics show that most fatal crashes do not happen in snow and ice. They don't even happen in bad weather. Most of the fatal crashes happen on dry days with fair weather conditions. So if the news is saying that it's going to be a bad ice storm or a winter storm is coming, you're going to even notice that it's less people on the road in the
Mhm.
worst weather conditions, which is kind of an eye opener for us to try to stay at home if at all possible.
Yeah.
The nice thing about it is we have the convenience of things like Zoom and working from home now, where we have some of those conveniences available. But if at all possible, if there's an errand you have to run, just try to save it until the roads are plowed and better.
Okay. Are there any types of vehicles that are safer than others?
Types of vehicles, I would say something with all-wheel drive is always your safer choice, where you just have all of the wheels moving at once for better traction in snow and ice. I know everyone probably, does not have that on their vehicle, but if you're shopping for a new vehicle and you're in Michigan, that might be something to consider.
Okay. Any recommendations for maintaining visibility of the tail lights when you're driving in the snow, like when you're behind someone? I think you'd already said to allow a good distance, but that also is something that you want to factor in, making sure that you can clearly see what's happening in front of you. If you maintain such a distance that you can't really tell what they're doing, it's almost safer to be closer where you can actually see their brake lights and things like that if the weather's really bad visibility wise.
Yes. We have that's a tricky situation though, because we don't want to be too close where if
Mhm.
that person slides or breaks suddenly, we don't have the reaction time available. And we need to keep at least 6 seconds of following distance between us and that vehicle ahead of us. So we could do things like drive in the tracks that they've already made for us rather than driving closer to their tail lights. Also, we want to make sure that we keep that spacing there and not use our high beam headlights. Many times people think because it's snowing, we should use our high beam headlights, and it's just the opposite. High beam headlights just makes the snow just whiter and brighter. It does not make it where we can see through it more clearly. So you want to keep your low beams on, and that
Mhm.
also doesn't blind the driver ahead of you, which makes it harder for them to see.
Yeah, that's great. And I also saw some information online where they were saying to stay clear of the salt trucks. I would assume that that's one of our primary objectives, is to kind of give them the space that they need to do what they need to do to keep the roads, to clear the roads for us and get them in better shape.
Yeah. Yep. And I know again that that comes back to us rushing a lot of times, and we just
Yeah.
want to go around them and we want to get out of their way. But we do want to leave like we would any other large vehicle. We want them to be able to see us too. And
Mhm.
along with that, we don't want damage to our car because of them throwing salt on our vehicle. And we want them to be able to do their job. We don't want them to be impacted by us driving too closely. So, for visibility purposes as well, keep a safe distance from those vehicles.
Okay. And do you have any final winter driving safety tips for brand new drivers? Is there anything that they can do to be better prepared and have a better understanding of what to do to be safe, especially their first time out in bad weather?
Yes, I do. So, first thing, practice. Practice makes perfect with any other skill we learn, and this includes driving. You can be the best driver in dry weather on a perfectly nice day. But if you don't have the experience of driving in snow, we don't want your first time to be on Black Friday this year when you're leaving the mall and there's a storm that has come overnight while you were shopping. So, we want to practice before that happens. Go to an open lot, like a mall lot that they're not going to plow first. They're going to plow the roads first and just practice in the vehicle that you already drive in and make turns and figure eight so that you can get the feel of how your car maneuvers in snowy conditions. Practice stopping and seeing how many seconds that it takes you to stop versus what you're used to driving on a clear day. So that is the main thing. And then don't rule out driving in snow. Don't put driving in snow on hold all
Mhm.
season. It's important to go out with a seasoned driver that has been driving all along so that you get used to driving in the snow. Here in Michigan, we know we have 4 seasons and we can have them all in a day. So we want to make sure that we are used to and comfortable to driving in those conditions.
I like the idea of going out with a seasoned driver, because when they have their permit, they
Mhm.
drive with a seasoned driver, but they could be doing that, like you said, in perfectly good weather. So to be able to, just have the safety net of someone that's more experienced, to kind of help coach them a little bit to make them
Oh, yes.
comfortable, certainly is a really good suggestion. And
That is so important.
I've gotten so much information. I'm ready to like fill my car up with emergency supplies and things. Cause I mean, a lot of times it's piecemeal, and it really is important to kind of
Yeah.
make a concerted effort to put, have a kit, have something. And they even say a first aid kit is also helpful,
Yes, very
in
helpful.
the unforeseen instances that you might have a problem. So, but
Yes.
I so appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And
And I would just say one more thing for a
Mhm.
person who's never driven, new driver, especially a teen, don't be afraid to take driver's training in the wintertime. There's
Great.
so many benefits from doing that. Most students, they say, I'm going to wait till spring and then I'm going to join driver's training, but
Mhm.
try to do the opposite. If it's available to you, if your schedule permits, join driver's training in the winter and get that experience so that your first time driving in the snow, you've already had it. You've had it with professional instructors that will help you and coach you along with all of the tips that you can use throughout your life to being safe and you just feeling comfortable on the road.
That's a great idea. Can you also, like, say your birthday, you know how they're very tied to the birthday and when exactly
Hmm.
they get to start. Can you
Yes.
also like take training during the spring and then maybe do like a refresh in the winter time? Like, do
Oh,
you do
yeah.
something like that?
Several drivers come back with permits, with licenses. Just they wait purposely until it snows and then they come back for extra support with the private lesson just to drive in the snow.
That's
So
great.
that's
That's a
so
great idea.
important because you want your first experience to be something that you got your coaching there, you feel comfortable, you're asking questions with your
Mhm.
instructor during driving in the snow that you may not have thought of otherwise.
That's great. That's really, really helpful. And I know for me, my mom encouraged me to get driver's training, because sometimes it's like, it's just like anything. It's like anyone that is teaching their son or daughter might not remember all the things that are important, like someone that's trained to instruct a student. Like I remember when they dropped my son off on his last, that they're like, he's ready and he just did this and he went around the circle and he was
Mhm.
very confident that that he was equipped for it. So I think that it's helpful to have someone other than you and someone that has the credentials and the training to really help them to learn the proper way.
Yes. Well, thank you. And a lot of times we take for granted because we've been driving so long, a seasoned driver, there's things you forget. It just comes natural to you.
Mhm.
Where if they take a class, they're in a program to prepare them, it's some of the things that we forget that those instructors will share with them just to make sure that they're ready for the road, especially in the snow.
Alrighty, well, I appreciate your time so much, and
Thank
have a
you.
great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Sharon.
Thank you. Take good care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.